All right, welcome everyone to TCL 65 week 5. This is our fifth? Yeah, boom. Maybe?
Yeah, we're
Where's
doing our week
high
four
five to the
retro.
camera? Everyone, high five to the camera. Yay,
Hey.
cool. Said everyone. No. Uh, okay, so we're gonna start it off with demos, which Nicole will be our host for that, and then we'll be doing retros today. And then we'll take a look at the issues and then we'll just get back to it.
Yeah,
So let's start off with demos.
of course. Who would like to start? I will just pick somebody.
Uh,
We can start, I
Cool.
think. Does that sound good, Lydia?
That's fine.
Great. Okay, so I think Lydia will pull up the screen and great. We had like a pretty straightforward issue this week. So reading about Isaiah and Shannon having really complicated one was like, oops. But I think that's the nature of dev work sometimes. So yeah, here's the basically our issue was to add a button on the list screen if you were in a list that had no items already added to it. And so if you're in a list that was empty, previously it would just show an empty screen with the filter bar at the top that Shannon and I had made last week. So the filter search. And so our issue was to when you enter an empty list, create if it's empty, have a button and some text that says this list is empty and add an item. And then that add item button would take you to the add item page to get started with your list. I think user and then we kind of like copied the text from the wireframe, which was pretty simple. So I know there were some comments about, looking for welcoming text, but we were kind of just looking at this. And then Lydia and I imagined that at the final week when we do like styling, that would be a time to come back and update this to match like our vision. So yeah, there's the wireframe, and then we can jump into the code. So this was only in one component, list JSX, and to add the button, and that was going to redirect us to the add item screen. We chose to use the use navigate hook from React Router DOM. So you can see on line 3, we imported it. And on line 8, because it's a hook, all hooks need to be declared at the top of a component. We just read this. So you have to declare, we declare it on line 8, constant navigate equals use navigate as a way to be able to use it in our handle add item function. So then on line 30, we have our button handler. So constant handle add item, pretty straightforward. Using the use navigate hook to send us to the add item route. And then the return of this component, we turned it into using a ternary operator, a conditional. So if on line 34, you can see if the length of our data is greater than 0, then we'll return what it previously was. So we'll display our form and we'll display our search term filter and our button. And then on line 58, you can see that else symbol to display a little bit of text. The shopping list is currently empty. And then our new button with our handle add item handler used as the on click. And so, yeah, that was our issue. This was how we resolved it. I saw Isaiah and maybe somebody else comment about accessibility with buttons, and that was something we briefly talked about at the end of working on it, but I think we didn't have like a solid knowledge of how to best address it. So that would be like, I think that would be really something I would be excited to learn more about. Yeah. Did I cover everything, Lydia?
Yeah, that was really good. I appreciate that it was a straightforward issue, but you explained it really well and you hit on all the parts, especially the button thing. I know Mike talked about it. We're going to talk about it next week. Semantic HTML rules would say that if the whatever you're using already defines itself, so a button already defines itself, you don't need to do the area text, which is kind of
Okay.
cool. And HTML made the move to doing that a few years ago, and it makes things way more accessible. And I'm going to try and record the screen reader this week, maybe you'll see it happen and see it say that it's a button. It's much easier for me as a screen reader user to access that. So I do appreciate it. And I like that Mike knew. I was like, yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
That demo would be, I would be really excited to see that demo.
It's really difficult to record the sound at the same time. So I've been talking to EJ, who's another vendor here, about how he's tried to make it work before. So we're gonna try.
Okay.
Patty and Lydia, or sorry, Patty and Isaiah, you guys want to present?
Yeah. Shannon and Isaiah.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
It's fine. I'm gonna pretty much let him run the show because I am so spaced out and this mask is awesome. So I hope y'all excuse me and I'm here for the ride. Thank you, Isaiah.
No worries, of course. Yeah.
God, you guys.
Okay, guys. So, sharing my screen here. So I'm gonna first just talk about this. So our issue this week was, as the user, we needed to add check boxes next to every list item. So those check boxes serve to allow the person using the app to go ahead and select a checkbox, and by doing that, that implies that they bought the item. So they're checking it off essentially the list. So when we did it, we had to make sure that that checkbox was renders a checkbox with a semantic label. Then we had to make sure that when that checkbox was clicked, it would update the Firebase store so that it would put a date on the date last purchased part of the Firebase, which I'll show in a bit. And then the next functionality that it had to have was it had to be set so that after 24 hours, we would assume that the buyer wouldn't buy the same thing in 24-hour span, but after 24 hours, they might want to buy it again. So that checkbox would uncheck itself, leaving the ability for that buyer to maybe want to buy it again. Yeah, and I will show a little bit of a demo. So as you can see here, we currently have the ability to make many lists, right? So I made a new list for this demo. So as you can see here on the left side, we're on War Automatic. Here's War Automatic. And I made 2 test items. So for 2 test items, you can see here on this side that they come up with a date last purchase of null, and they come up with a total purchases of 0. Okay, so every new item that you create is gonna naturally have the schema to do that. So right now I'm on test for lists. So if I click test for lists, as you guys can see, it populates a date last purchased and total purchases increases to 1. If I keep clicking it, it still populates more purchases. That might be something that maybe in the future we wouldn't want them to keep clicking and this keep populating, but for now, I mean, that's what it does. As you can see, it increases, it changes the date. But if you edit this field and if you go on the date and you go into the past, like more than 1 day, but for now I'm just gonna do 2 days. And if I do that, then if you guys see here, the checkbox would go away naturally. And yeah, and that's that is that code. That's our project. And then I will show you the code. If I could just move the zoom. So here is our code. So we started in list item. So list item is where we originally had just everything that showed what was rendered on the each list item. So we added functionality to the list item function. And as you can see here, we pass in some props that we're going to pass into list.jsx later. We ended up making our function. I'll start here actually. So we returned a label, and that label had to input a checkbox. Every time it was checked, it was going to run item purchased, and on change, it was going to update item, a function that I'll later show in Firebase. And it passed these props as well. So every time that it was checked, it's going to run item purchase function. That item purchase function would check if the item was purchased within the last 24 hours. The way we had to do that is we wrote out a day in milliseconds. And then we checked if there was a date last purchased or not. And if there was, then we were going to add, essentially, we were going to check if that date last purchased was basically less than the new date. So essentially, if it was less than 24 hours in time, then, and if so, then it would return true or false. And then in terms of the Firebase code, so over here, so like I said, every time there was a change, it would update the Firebase code. And the Firebase code essentially was just giving that item specifically. So this is specifically checking, it's specifically pointing to that item. Then it would give it a new date, and then it would do total purchases +1. And then it was just error handling. And then list.jsx, we're just passing in more props to that list page. And yeah, like I said, just in this preview myself, I kind of just had the idea that maybe there should be some type of functionality to, if it's already been checked, and not allowed it to keep clicking total purchases more. But yeah, if there's any other questions, I would be open to answering those. Thanks, guys.
Good job, Isaiah. Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
You know what?
I have questions. How did you guys find handling the date logic? Last purchase, next purchase. Oh my gosh, this is your next 2 or 3 weeks. If you are, we're not on this issue this week, get on it next week. Because if you ever have to present this, I've messed this up in interviews like 6 times. So
Yeah,
It
that
was
was
really challenging,
yeah.
the whole date situation. And yeah, I learned a lot how to work with that API and this new date.
And then how did you find the Firestore handling of the date? Because it's a little different, right?
Yeah, that actually is what gave us so many issues during the week. We didn't yeah, and that's, so we ended up, you know, with the help of our mentors who kind of like steered us in the right direction a little bit. We looked on the Firebase documentation, and we found out how the different ways that you can use date in the Firestore, and we ended up figuring out that that using a different way to show the date helped a lot. And then we ended up doing some conversions in our code. For example, doing seconds, changing this here to seconds times 1,000 made essentially all the difference in our code. Before that, it was trying to compare the date to this date, and it was like trying to compare seconds to a literal day, and it wouldn't work at all. And that was like essentially the one problem that we ended up having. So once we figured that out, it got good. It worked a lot better. So we definitely learned a lot, like Shannon said.
Cool.
I'm kind of glad, like obvious, I just out of, all full transparency, I kind of thought that this was going to be a difficult issue. So I like spoke up right away. Good job, Shan. Anyway, what I thought was cool is the way that when we went to office hours, Mike and Matthew helped us like troubleshoot the problem, like looking at what is the data, like how is it coming back, and then how to like step by step figure out what the heck is going on. Like what I didn't even really understand what the issue was completely, but being able to go and learn how to figure that out, like that really was mind-blowing because we really struggle. And we were so close. So when, yeah, like the so close part was just like, please,
Yeah.
really? So there was some mathing that had to happen and some converting. And I really appreciate what I learned this week about dates and milliseconds and such. It was hard, but it was so worth it. We did a really good job. I'm proud of both of us, Isaiah, as well.
Yeah, I saw Mike's message being like, we like doing this. And I was so upset. You don't come to one office hours one week, and the next week you're there and I could be helpful. And I can I'm coming every week now because that's so exciting. Like I would, if I had been Mike and Matt, I would have been really excited. But yeah, it sounds like it went really well for you guys, and I am so glad. I also just wanted to highlight that Lydia had a really good comment, which sucks because I'm doing these retro or these like code reviews, and then I read the comments and I'm like, darn, I wish I had thought of that. Where she suggested making item an object and passing it as a prop, which is like a potential thing to think about.
I think that we actually talked about that. Remember, Isaiah, and like the one of the millionth things that we were trying to figure out at one point, didn't we like destructure it and just turn it into just item itself?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we tried so many different things and like patchworked, but that comment made a lot of sense. So it'd probably make it easier, right? We should figure that one out maybe.
More reusable for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just wanted to highlight that as a cool comment. Thank you. Thank you for showing me your work this week. Good job.
Thanks, guys.
I don't know who's doing retros, but we have retros and I dropped it in the chat.
Oh, nice. Thank you. I'd actually pre-typed something I was just about to hit enter on, but you beat me to it. Cool. Yeah, so we are doing retros. That board should open for everyone, so let me know if you have any issues. I added a few myself, just kind of get us going. But what I can do is set a timer, or yeah, I was thinking roughly about 5 minutes, something like that. And then I'll just kind of what's the word? Not skim, but you know what I mean. I'll kind of peruse through them, and yeah, we can chat about all these different columns. So I'll start that now. It's 8:23, probably be 8:24 in a second, and so I'll probably wrap at about 8:28 our time. So yeah, feel free to start adding. Cool. So that's just about the time that we had set aside. But I can always allow a little bit more if anyone needs it. It looks like there's a good amount on there though, so I can get going unless anyone wants another minute. Cool, I'll get going. So I often find that appreciation and what went well kind of blend together. So I love starting with both those. But yeah, so I'll start from the left and move to the right. So my first one was just a shout out to Shannon and Isaiah for fighting through a really tough issue this week. And like Nicole mentioned, dates are hard, and it sounds like there's some more date Firebase related issues coming up. So yeah, something to bear in mind. Another great reason to get a jump early in the week, just in case these tricky things do come up. I should have checked in. Everyone can see my screen, correct? I started sharing it during the, okay, cool. Next one, love that the mentors were helpful and the feedback was that they helped to, and the feedback was that they helped to an answer rather than give, oh, gotcha, rather than give one. That's what good mentoring looks like. Yeah, agreed. That's something I always try to work on, is get you there, not solve it for you. That's the learning is for sure. Appreciated the mentors for being around. Loving these so far. I appreciate that Lydia came to our pairing session. Having done some research about use navigate and navigate, it was nice to experiment with different methods and it opened up a bunch of questions for me. Yeah, having background knowledge about all the React hooks and what's available to you is super helpful. Appreciate the mentors being kind and sorry, I'll just open that up just in case more pop up. Appreciate the mentors being kind and helpful this week and how they helped us when we had questions about our issue. Appreciate Shannon continuing to work hard with me on the issue this week despite feeling under the weather. Yeah, sorry to hear that, Shannon. Mike said everyone has been so positive and supportive. There's a general positive and supportive vibe all around, prepared, ready for not being ready, generosity of spirit. Definitely feel that. Mentors are so dependable, agreed. Lydia really sunk her teeth into commenting out the other group's PR. That's awesome. And Patty notices things to look out for in upcoming work. Appreciate the heads up. Yeah, that's great. It's really great to look ahead and gives you an idea of where the project is going so you can sometimes tailor your code to make your future life easier. And then I'll move on to what went well. Great collaboration by everyone once again, and love the self-motivation. I hopped into the mentors kind of have their own kind of like syncs on Fridays. That's totally optional for us. It's just a chance for us to chat to mentors in other groups. And I did hear that, and not going to call any out specifically, but there's one where they're kind of having a hard time with the collabbies being motivated and participated and attending office hours and things like that. And so it just made me feel really lucky that we don't have that issue whatsoever in this group. Everyone's on it and wants to be here. And yeah, it was kind of bummer hearing that. So we offered some tips from our group, who was so great, to hopefully help their group get going a little bit, because everyone's good. Sometimes people just motivated differently. Yeah, partner and I really worked well together. Isaiah and Shannon utilizing office hours. I agree. That was awesome for you guys showing up. Great lesson learned about reaching out before you invest too much time in troubleshooting. Let's see. Me and my partner did our best to communicate well this week, which allowed us to listen to each other's ideas and ultimately decide when to turn to help when needed. Really get in the flow of collaborating during pair programming. That's awesome. That's definitely a big part of this whole program. And then everyone is doing such great code reviews. Agreed. All right, and then for me, this is more the trickier column. What could be improved? I didn't want to harp on it, but yeah, just definitely always feel free to ask for help when needed. We don't want you all struggling too much. A little bit of struggle is great, but especially when it starts, going up against your time commitments. That's something we're sensitive about, and we're, you know, definitely ask for help. You'll find that in your job as well. It's definitely a practice, and I think, as I mentioned in office hours, it's something you'll never quite master, but you'll get better at. It's just that balance of when to keep working, when to ask for help. Moving down, we could be listing out potential future things we want to do on our project board for weeks 7 and 8, so we don't forget them by the time we get there, and so we feel better about sticking to the ACs. Yeah, I'd be interested to hear more about that. Next time I am stuck as I'm going to ask for help sooner. Awesome. It'd be interesting to see people start brainstorming on potential tests as we start building out these features. So we know that we have at least some testing conceptualization starting to happen. Great idea. That's something I'm still trying to get better at. It would be great to try and have code merge before weekly syncs so that you could be demoing what's in production. Yeah, that did cross my mind as well. That's something, if we could try to get to that, that's a great goal. And then we know for sure what it all works, like how it works when everything is together. So both PRs are together in main. Continue to check in with our partners to make sure they feel heard during partner programming. And then office hours was a great way to solve the issues we ran into this week, but considering how much simpler Lydia and I's issue was, I wonder if it makes sense to plan to share the work more based on issues or reach out for help to the other devs as well when stuck. Yeah, it's a good point. I think the issues are, for the most part, drawn up to be as equal as possible. Maybe that's one that we could feedback. They're always trying to find ways to improve the program. So if we identify issues that are more different in terms of time, we can let the team know. And then the last column anyway, things learned. I learned more just about Firebase and timestamps and dates and whatnot, just watching you all work through it. I haven't dealt with Firebase since I did my program, and so it's cool seeing it all again. And then optional chaining I was aware of. My company just got to ES6, so we're very behind. And I actually used this as an example of like the extra motivation for getting our company to upgrade our code faster so we can use these very cool things, like optional chaining, the if then not, I don't know, there's so many if checks that we have to do without it, and yeah, I want it. Asking for help / saying you don't know something is an underappreciated and necessary engineering skill. Agreed. Date conversion is tricky. Always do the docs. Docs are amazing. Definitely. I remember early on, I always watched videos and like, just read the docs. Like all the information is there for you. It's a habit that you get into. Don't skip office hours. React hooks need to be declared at the top of a function and cannot be used in conditionals or callback functions. It's a good reminder. And then returning navigate as a component is another way to route to a new component, but we weren't able to figure out how to make it work in our situation. Interesting. Yeah. Love to dig more into that too. So cool. So we got a few minutes. If there's any of these specific ones that anyone wants to discuss further, we can. I was most interested in this one. I'm not sure who wrote it, but if yeah, Nicole, if you want to elaborate just slightly more.
Yeah.
It's early and I'm still waking up, so
So I know, because I've talked to some of you, I know that like, when you're doing this stuff, you see something and you're like, oh man, like I want to do this in the future, or would it be cool if we did that? And like, oh, I wish I could add this in. And you'll see, like, I know that Matt's been incredible about it. And I think I've said it too. And certainly, of course, like, well, whatever. The point is, people have said, like, stick to the acceptability criteria. Don't go past it because we have more stuff coming or whatever. If you start writing down what you want to do, so weeks 7 and 8 are a little bit of a free for all. You can go off and develop your own new features. Please, somebody, at least one person, stay and style it. You're going to want to be like writing some tests because you want the experience writing the tests. Maybe you want to look at security, whatever it is. Like you're going to want to have all that experience, but you can't do it right now because those acceptability criteria build on each other, and you can't jump because you'll mess up somebody else's work in the future, right? So if you start writing it down, you can have a list of things, like just use the project board or whatever, just like, oh, I think it would be cool if we did this, or I found this thing and I want it to be a mascot, or what if I was like one of the other things I also wrote the thing about like writing out potential test ideas, because like as you're putting like as we start inputting in items, for example, well, that's a whole ton of tests that you can start thinking of what that's going to look like, right? If you have a list now, when it comes to week 7 and 8, then you have almost like a to-do list, so you can like go and cherry pick what you think is going to be like most appropriate or like develop you the most as a developer. Does that make sense? Yeah, I just think it's really useful. I wish I had done that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And just a reminder that, yeah, there are future weeks where they are more open-ended and do allow you to catch up on some of these nice to haves that we're not able to do just yet. And I think there was a ticket what do we call these? Anyway, there was a comment here about tests, and yeah, thank you for shouting that out and what you just said too. That's also a great opportunity to work on tests as well.
I found that like at least in interviews 6 months ago or so, I got a lot of questions about tests. And as an earlier career developer, I didn't have any experience on it. What am I testing? You know what I mean? Like, so we can test this. Yeah, I feel like that one was important.
Yeah, I don't know how everyone else's boot camps were, but mine just didn't touch on tests. And at least at that time, a few years ago, that seemed the norm. Maybe they're getting better, but yeah, it's very underutilized, like in early dev, but it's so important and people love to see it, as they should.
Yeah, I got tests. Accessibility is such a low-hanging fruit thing, so we'll run over that next week, and you will be top, and it will make you look incredible. Mike just offered to talk about tests in office hours, and I want to take him up on that. So, like, yes, please.
Sure, yeah. Like I feel
yeah.
like I've kind of almost built my career around testing. Like that's whenever I go into a new team, I was like, all right, cool. There's an area where there's not much, like where there's a lot of room for growth. And usually like my first thing is just like, all right, let's go in and do testing here. I think it's really fun. And I have this theory going forward that as AI gets better at writing code, the important thing will be the tests around that code. And I think like QA engineers and testing is going to be increasing in value. That's just my like futuristic sci-fi theory, but yeah.
I would absolutely attend your office hours.
Cool.
Yeah.
The next time I have one, I'll try to have something like teed up if we're just sitting around. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
That's great. Awesome. Yeah, that's anyone else have any kind of final words about anything that like prompted a thought as I was reading through these, or cool. So that is the retro board. So that will be around if you ever want to like look back on it. The one from 2 weeks ago is also on there. So I will stop sharing, and that gives us plenty of time to go over issues. And I think that might be yourself, Mike.
Yeah. Hang on. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I feel like both of these issues are super fun this week. Just my perspective. But first one is, as a user, I want to be alerted when I'm entering an empty item or an item that's already on my list. So essentially users shouldn't be able to add an empty item to their list or add the same item twice. They try to do this, we need to show them an error message that explains the problem. This will prevent some clutter in their list. I know for me, I don't know about you all, but like when I'm doing the testing, I end up adding a lot of bananas in champagne. I don't know why, but this will make it so that you have to be unique each time. Show the AC is to show an error message if they try to submit an empty item. Error message if they try to submit a new item that is identical to an existing name. For instance, if the list contains apples and the user tries to add apples. Show an error message if the user tries to submit a new item that matches the existing name with punctuation and casing normalized. For instance, if the list contains apples and the user adds those different ways of doing it. This one, though, I'm curious about a polls, right? Because you could be trying to add a polls, which maybe could be a thing. So I don't know. What do you? I almost feel like ignore this one. My personal, but I'll leave it up to you because I could imagine that there are other things that could have spaces where it's like they're actually two different things. But I'll, just something for you all to decide on the behavior. And then, yeah, the original input is saved in the database. Any questions on this one?
I have a question.
Mhm.
What does that mean the user's original input is saved in the database? Does that mean their wrong input, or does that mean they're the correct one?
Oh, the user's original input is saved in the database. I think that the one that like already existed, right? So if I go and try and add apples and there's already apples in the database, that apples remains in the database and it should like we are not updating the date that it was added or anything like that, right? So like the original item and its data remains consistent with how it was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think hearing that, it wouldn't want you to replace it, because it has its
Yeah.
original, like 24-hour thing, or it has its like time that's associated with it. So I think that's maybe where that's coming from too.
Yeah. Cool. Other questions? Great question, by the way. Cool. All right. Let's move on to 10. So 10, we are doing a little bit of date stuff. And just want to let you know ahead of time that there's some notes in here that would have been really helpful last week. So I feel like some feedback that we can provide will be put this on the previous one. But yeah, kind of funny. Okay, so as an item, so put yourself in the items perspective, right? We're all items here. I want my estimated next purchase date to be computed at the time my purchase is recorded in the database so the app can learn how often I buy different things, right? And this is where we're starting to move from not just your boring old shopping list, but a smart, super intelligent, fancy shopping list. So in order to advise users about when to purchase things, the app needs to be able to calculate that guess and store it as a future date. There's a calculate estimate function from the utils module, which will help us know how many days in the future a purchase should happen. In order to calculate estimate, we need to know how many days have passed since the time the item was last purchased. So essentially there's this calculate estimate function that's in there. You'll see what are the inputs required, and it'll do some magic to give you calculated estimates based on past estimates, I believe. When the user purchases an item, the item's date next purchase property is calculated using calculate estimate function and saved to the Firestore database. So I think that in the prior week, we were told to just ignore date next purchase, but now we're going to be updating that. date next purchased is saved as a date and not a number. And in our troubleshooting this week, we almost like saved dates as Unix timestamps, I think, which is number of milliseconds since January 1st, 1970. And good thing that we didn't, because this is saying don't do that. Get days between function is exported with utils/dates and imported into this Firebase JS file, and function takes two JavaScript dates and returns the number of days that have passed between them. So here is a little hint for the implementation that should be JavaScript dates, not Firestore dates. And the stuff that would have been really useful last week that we should add on, add as a note for the future, is that there's a difference between a Firestore timestamp object and a JavaScript date. And then the timestamp has two dates on it, which I believe converts it into a JavaScript date. So we can also take a look at the existing code and see, is this a way that we can go about it? Or I'm guessing that we also found our own way of converting to a JavaScript date that is equally as valid in my opinion. But yeah, so here there are just some notes about some of the stuff and some details on some of the arguments that calculate estimate takes. So yeah, questions here. Awesome, cool.
I
So
have
do we
some questions.
Oh yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
I was just not sure exactly what I want to ask.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're calculating and storing date next purchased in the Firebase database. Is that right?
Correct.
And are we using the like how often we think we're gonna buy this property as part of this estimate?
So calculate estimate is we're populating date next purchase using calculate estimate, which is this
Okay.
function that's provided. And this function takes three arguments. It takes the previous estimate, right, where we can try and figure out where we're going to get that. The days since the last purchase, which I believe is also something we can figure out where to get, but may or may not exist in our data. And then the total purchases that have been made, right? And then it returns a whole number indicating the number of days. So essentially the bulk of the work is going to be figuring out what is the appropriate thing to pass into them, passing it in a format that's consistent with what calculate estimate is accepting, and then updating date next purchase with what calculate estimate returns.
Okay, so then date next purchased is like purchased back past tense is kind of weird, right? Because we're saying the date we anticipate to purchase next, essentially. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's, I guess, like the next purchase date.
Okay.
I'd agree that it is odd naming to talk about the future and the past, right?
Okay, so then each time you click I purchased this, it's going to create a new estimate using the last estimate, which I think is probably influenced by your first selection of how often you think you'll buy this, and probably make some kind of average or whatever. And then that estimate of how often you buy it is going to shift each time you buy it.
Correct. And then each time you buy it, it's going to be using your new previous estimate, right? And so it'll get smarter as you buy it more times.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I get it now.
Cool. Thanks for all the really great questions. Any other questions on this?
Does the function get days between dates do something similar to the manual calculation of subtracting one date from another, or the seconds in one date from another from the previous from issue, I think, number 8
Yeah, I
or
believe
9?
that. Yeah, I believe that it will give you the number of days versus if you were to subtract one from the other, it would be giving, it would just be giving you like the time between those,
Okay.
but not
Yeah.
in days. And a lot of the difficulty and things that just in general in dates that you may find yourself having to do in the future are trying to like get like one day out of things, or like a number that is something that you can work with out of things. And there are all of these utility libraries like datefns and others. Moment.js was the one that people used in the past, but it's now like not really supported. But there's a bunch of date libraries that exist that do things like this, just to make it easier to work with. Yeah. Cool. Other questions? All right. So who are our groups this week? Try to find it in here.
I think it's me and Lydia, and then Isaiah and Patty.
Okay. So who wants to be doing our kind of error handling one here? I guess user behavior encouragement.
Isaiah, you're muted. I was watching your pick
Oh.
there.
I'm fine with whatever Patty wants to do.
I feel similarly.
I've worked with dates last week, but I don't, you haven't. So, if you want to do dates, we can do dates, or if not, up for both.
Same over here.
Okay. We can take this one.
I want you to like look inside of yourself and think authentically, what do you actually want?
I am not gonna say anything.
I say between Lydia and Patty, which one you want to do the date ones?
I've worked with dates.
So,
I used datefns actually, which you mentioned, because it was terrible. So
yeah, I feel.
So does that mean you want to
fine.
work with dates, or that you're?
I would be fine either way, but it wouldn't be like a growth experience. I mean, maybe a little. It would be because of the learning to collaborate, but I'm set on dates.
Okay, you're set on dates, so then we'll have you do the other one. Okay, so wait, I totally blanked. It was Lydia and who? Shannon. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. There's that one, and then we'll head over to 10. Yeah, and
Perfect.
awesome, cool. Look at this. We're almost at time here. So yeah. All right. Well, great work, y'all. Keep it up, and we will see you all on Slack.
I have a shameless plug before we go, really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Tuesday at 1:00 PST, I'm giving a tech talk for Collab Lab. One of my new friends generously gave me the gift of their time this week, and we talked about the impact of changes of availability to various technologies. In this case, it was specifically Pornhub, which I thought was interesting, and how that affects sex workers and technology. So on Tuesday, I'm going to be giving a tech talk that talks about sort of how sex workers are the first impacted by technology. We're going to talk about how that impacts dev work in 2023, how that impacts your job search, and we'll talk a little bit about lacquer on Chinese dildos from the 15th century. So not friendly for small ears, but if you want to come, please do. I'm going to ask TCL to not record it, I think, just because it is such a sensitive topic. But if you are a feminist of the non-neolib kind, or if you live in the United States, or if you are a leftist who wants to work in technology and who wants to talk about these things, I'll be talking about it. So please come.
Cool.
You'll
And
post
what-
the link. We'll have information to be able to come and watch.
Yeah.
Tuesday at 1 p.m. PST.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I'll be there.
Cool.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, sounds super awesome.
My heart is racing saying all those things.
That sounds cool.
All right. Well, I will see you all online and possibly at the TikTok. All right.
Thanks,
See ya.
guys. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.